Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, drying your hands in those those public restroom hot air hand dryers, a lot of people don't even realize that they're drying their hands with not just air, but fecal bacteria. Ooh. That's right. SWIFT, the banking transaction company organization, is taking actions against Iran. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about what science is doing to alter the genes of our food supply. But first, we're going to ask you just how sanitary you might think those hot air hand dryers found in most public restrooms are. A new study found that they are actually sucking up feces, fecal matter particles from the air and spraying them onto your hands. The study found that as many as 60 bacteria colonies can be blown onto your hands in just one 30-second drying.
I suppose it doesn't help any that your hands are wet, so the bacteria go there, and of course they dry there, but then when they're rehydrated, they can easily come alive.
And then the heat opens your pores, which probably drives them even deeper.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Calabasas and Malibu in California have recently been evacuated as the Camp and Woolsey fires continue to rage out of control, rendering this latest series of wildfires the worst ever. Now, over 250,000 people have to leave their homes due to the threat of the fires. 31 have been confirmed dead, nearly 7,000 structures destroyed, and over 200 missing, with those numbers expected to continue to rise.
And sadly, California has been experiencing a continually worsening drought.
That's right,
and
very dry.
The vegetation is extremely dry, so any slight spark can take one of these little fires and turn them into a very large one very quickly. As we see here in Northern California, the retirement community of Paradise has suffered the brutal effects of 4 days of fires raging through the quiet community as it burns at a rate of 30 football fields a minute. That's right. Down PG&E power lines, along with strong winds, is believed to have initiated this latest round of devastating fires. Crews are combing through tons of rubble, searching for survivors that may be, or recovering the dead bodies of those not able to make it out in time.
Family members are busy posting pictures of loved ones online at a local shelter, hoping to find out any information on their missing family members. Now, the local county sheriff and coroner said that the remains that have been recovered are nothing more than ash and bone. Now, at least 7 people died in their cars as they tried to evacuate. Daryl Wilkin, a registered nurse, is glad to be alive as he drove through the intense fires with 3 of his patients as they evacuated Paradise. And that's what a lot of the eyewitness accounts are saying, that it came so fast, people had very, very little time to react in any way.
Yeah, sad that those people had to go through that. He said that as he was driving, that everywhere he could see, that cars he saw were on fire, and he said he didn't see anyone walking, and he thought to himself, there's people in those cars. Well, firefighters haven't began to assess the damage in the cities down the road from Paradise, as there are so much things that they have yet to do in that area itself.
Well, in another area of California, Thousand Oaks, at the Borderline Bar and Grill, a gunman entered the establishment and opened fire. Now, a vigil was held for the victims of the massacre, where one woman escaped the chaos only to lose 3 of her friends. Alexis Tate said in tears while speaking to Sky News, "They need to do something. People with mental problems shouldn't be allowed to have guns. They," referring to the politicians, "need to step up and take action. Everyone is talk and no action. We need to do something about this."
her friends had recently survived another mass shooting in Las Vegas last year, only to lose their lives in yet another mass shooting. Susan Schmidt-Orfanos lost her son in the shooting and said in an interview that she doesn't want any prayers or thoughts. She said, "I hope to God no one sends me any more prayers. I want gun control. No more guns," she said as she turned and walked away, very upset over the loss of her son.
Well, Thousand Oaks was declared the third safest city in America this year. Now, this shooting comes less than 2 weeks since another gunman killed 11 people in Pittsburgh. Now, in a place where you'd think something like this would never occur, people are seeing these events as the new norm. Now, in the meantime, America is paralyzed by a failure to find a way to stop these massacres from happening over and over again.
That's right, and we're seeing an increase in this. In the last year of former President Barack Obama, we saw a continual spree of shootings in schools and in public places that it almost was a once or twice a week thing for a long period of time there. Well, staying in California, just outside of Los Angeles, a music teacher was arrested and charged with child abuse after a violent fist fight with a student at Maywood Academy High School. Cell phone footage recorded the scuffle between the teacher, 64-year-old Marston Riley, as he punched the student in the face and continued to pummel the student to the ground.
Witnesses say that the fight started after Riley asked the student to leave the classroom for not wearing the proper school uniform, and the student allegedly responded with a series of racial slurs. Now, students say that it just went back and forth from there. The student was taken to the hospital and treated. Riley posted bail. Now, other teachers say that he had been verbally and physically assaulted in the past.
It's sad that teachers have to even get to a breaking point like that where they lash out and, in this case, act with physical violence towards another student. But it's also sad that they have those things done to them as well. We see that not only taking place in schools, but a form of bullying, so to speak, taking place internationally, this time with Iran. Larry, I understand that there's some things taking place with Iran that is negatively impacting their economy. What exactly do you have for us regarding that matter?
Yes, that's true, Katan. While the pressure was lifted somewhat during the previous administration, Tehran was able to stand at ease. The current administration is making it abundantly clear that Iran is still marked for a takedown. President Trump announced recently that he is reimposing all of the sanctions lifted in the Iranian deal as a consequence for their alleged support of terrorism. Certain waivers issued by the U.S. will allow Turkey and several other nations to continue conducting oil business with Iran, but the move will nonetheless hurt the country to the tune of billions. For more insight on the president's latest moves and its implications, we have now a short video. Please have a look.
U.S. sanctions on Iran are back, and they're bigger and bolder. Washington has not just reinstated all penalties in place before the 2015 nuclear deal. The Trump administration has also put an additional 300 Iranian entities and individuals on its blacklist. That brings the total to 900. Washington has also warned of repercussions should anyone continue to trade with Tehran. Only 8 countries will be allowed to temporarily continue buying Iranian oil. Among them are Turkey, India, and the biggest importer, China. Oil prices fell on the news that OPEC's third biggest exporter could linger in the market for a while more. But investors were also cautious about a defiant Iran.
We have been selling our oil and will continue to sell it under all circumstances. We have the power to do that. They say that Iran bypasses the sanctions. Yes, we announce it proudly that we bypass your illegal and oppressive sanctions.
Another sector at risk of being crippled is banking and finance. Global payments network SWIFT resisted the U.S. decision to reimpose sanctions in August, saying it would only follow EU directives. But on Monday, the Brussels-based company said it would suspend some Iranian banks from its financial messaging service. While SWIFT's decision may help avert a transatlantic tussle, It would cut off Iran's main financial channel to the outside world. SWIFT connects 11,000 financial institutions in more than 200 countries. It allows Iran to be paid for its exports, as well as pay for imports. It makes more than 30 million financial transactions a day, which opens up a way for companies to invest in Iran. If it's forced to abandon SWIFT's system, those investments would drop significantly. Iranian businesses will also have to revert to an old, barter-style, unregulated banking system. But the US is not backing down from what it calls maximum pressure to muscle Iran into abandoning its nuclear program.
We are making it abundantly clear to the Iranian regime that they will face mounting financial isolation until they fundamentally change their destabilizing behavior. Until they fundamentally change their destabilizing behavior.
But so far, Iran is showing it's willing to take on more sanctions, even if it means being cut off from the world once again.
But in fact, there are those among the international community who don't support the American push to conquer Iran. And as those same nations deliberate to contrive measures to assist Tehran in circumventing the U.S. sanctions, the U.S. itself is working to check their efforts, advancing key pieces like the SWIFT banking system. In a statement, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin stated, "We have advised SWIFT that it must disconnect any Iranian financial institutions that America designates as soon as technologically feasible to avoid sanctions exposure." In a heavy blow to the European Union and other powers hoping to help Iran, SWIFT announced that it fully intends to conform to America's instructions. That will in effect make doing business with Tehran a trickier proposition. But Germany, for example, has already gone on record expressing Europe's intention to continue financial cooperation with Iran nonetheless. For any unfamiliar with SWIFT, it is a private financial messaging service run out of Belgium that has its hands in most of the world's financial transactions. When anyone wants to buy or sell something internationally, SWIFT takes the payment information and ensures that the money reaches its destination securely. With all of that financial data, though, SWIFT could pose a serious threat, but the financial institution maintains that it is neutral, even in the face of actions like allowing the CIA and U.S. Treasury Department access to its files under the Terror Finance Tracking Program, which was exposed by several news agencies back in 2006. History shows that the enterprise was not always so quick to yield to American demands, though, and was in fact initially reluctant to pull Iran from its system. In 2012, however, when Tehran's nuclear program came into serious question, the financial organization faced pressure and legal action from the U.S. and EU alike. Because of that, it expelled Iranian banks from its system and has become known for pretty much doing whatever America says so since then. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Interesting, Katan and Larry's report that SWIFT is a privately owned organization, and it's amazing the power that they hold to either make or break a country, because if they can't deal internationally like that, it almost shuts them off from the rest of the world.
It absolutely does.
Well, in Moscow, peace talks of a new kind are underway. A dozen countries, as well as representatives for the Taliban, were invited to the Kremlin to talk about the possibility of peace in Afghanistan. Now, this is the first time the Qatar-based Taliban has made an open and public appearance at an international gathering.
9 countries, including an Afghani delegation, are participating in the discussion. That's goal is to find a lasting peace in Afghanistan. Many have to admit this is a great achievement of Russia's diplomacy. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov opened the conference by saying Afghanistan's problems can only be solved by political means, through nationwide consent with the participation of all warring parties.
While Kabul did not send its diplomats to Moscow, the High Peace Council members, a government-appointed body which is responsible for overseeing Afghans' peace process, did attend. While an American delegation was invited, they did not accept the invitation to these important talks.
Through the course of the talks, the Afghans indicated they were ready for direct dialogue with the Taliban movement, and during the break, members from the two groups were seen shaking hands and talking. So it definitely appears like there is a desire there to find a peaceful solution to their differences. One representative of the Taliban told the media they are open for any talks that would bring peace to Afghanistan.
Well, just a little background about the war in Afghanistan, which, if you remember, Katan, began because U.S. believed the Taliban was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. So at that time, President George W. Bush, he made the decision to invade Afghanistan in order to hunt down Osama bin Laden and hit his group of Taliban terrorists.
That's right. Toward the end of 2001, the United States determined there were no good targets in Afghanistan. Furthermore, waging a war there would be no contest and was thought it would be over in literally a matter of weeks. Kabul was won rather quickly, and the U.S. moved on to Iraq. But did the U.S. stop fighting in Afghanistan?
Sadly, no. In fact, a new report just came out saying that the United States dropped more bombs on Afghanistan in 2018 than any year prior. So not only has the war gone on for 17 years, but now somehow we have found many places to bomb in a country where the military said there was no important targets from the beginning of that war.
Yeah, it seems like we're just kind of throwing money away at a war, so to speak, where there really is no targets, but we continue to bomb. 17 years later, even after they went from Afghanistan on to Iraq, and of course we've seen in Syria and other places that the United States have gone. Why? Why are we spending the money? Many people want to know. Well, the World Health Organization has published a new study on the effects of air pollution. The study found in 2016 over 600 children died from acute lower respiratory infections that were caused by air pollution. The WHO recently held its first global conference on air pollution and health.
Well, the director of the Department of Public Health Environment at the WHO told RT almost 93% of the children worldwide are breathing toxic air, and these have terrible consequences. Now, the study also discovered that even low levels of pollution can damage a child's lung function.
Children breathe more rapidly than adults do, and therefore they absorb more of the polluted air around them, which puts them at greater risk for chronic diseases later on in life, like cardiovascular disease.
There have been devastating health impacts from polluted air on the Asian continent. Now, a report from the United Nations found that each year over 4 million people die in the Asia-Pacific region of health problems that are related to air pollution.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, the air we breathe is not the only thing we should be concerned about these days. In the never-ending endeavor to make food perfect and effortless, scientists have established a new process that may change the food we find in the supermarket as soon as next year.
Well, the process is called gene editing, and what it means is scientists can actually alter the DNA of animals and plants that we consume. While farmers have been using selective breeding and genetically manipulating crops for centuries to develop certain traits in offspring and seeds, now scientists say they have perfected a better way which they feel takes it to a higher level.
Wow. While gene editing has been around since the late 1900s, the experts say the improvements to the process will alter foods and plants more accurately at a lower cost. In essence, gene editing is like taking a molecular scissors and cutting the letters of an organism's own genetic alphabet and removing them.
Well, one goal for doing this is to create fruits and vegetables that will last longer. So I would imagine, Katan, that you could set them on the shelf or even keep them in your refrigerator and they would last weeks without rotting, is the way it sounds like they're trying to get it to the fruit to become. Well, scientists also hope to save some plant species that are at risk of being wiped out due to disease. Jim Mentor from the University of Florida explained it this way. He said, if we can go in and edit the gene, change the DNA sequence ever so slightly by 1 or 2 letters, potentially we'd have a way to defeat this disease.
As for farm animals, scientists claim gene editing is a way to lessen suffering they go through. It is reported that farmers use hot irons to dehorn dairy cows, but with the use of gene editing, scientists can strip away the gene responsible for growing horns. Then farmers wouldn't have to dehorn them anymore.
Well, another use that the U.S. Humane Society support concerns male piglets. When they hit puberty, their meat often takes on a foul odor. To combat this issue, farmers castrate the pigs but do not give them any painkillers. Through gene editing, the need for castration could be eliminated because the gene which causes the pigs to go through puberty would be removed.
Well, the U.S. National Academy of Science insists gene editing is a breakthrough America needs to improve food production. And while the Humane Society is all for ending pig castration and cow dehorning through gene editing, not everyone is in agreement. Paul Thompson is a professor of agriculture at Michigan State University, and he says that beyond playing God, there's an ethical question that's been debated for at least the last 20 years of whether, he says, you need to change the animal or change the system.
And interesting, Katan, that this has been tried, as you just mentioned here, 20 years they've been debating this. They've been doing this a long time already, and they've proven that there are very negative consequences. And as Mr. Mentor mentioned, that we're just going to slightly change it. Well, that slight change alters it, and we're seeing more problems than we have ever seen benefits from these things.
And one thing that a lot of scientists don't take into consideration, at least in the long term, is these foods have certain genetic codes to enable them to benefit us and animals that rely on them as well. So when you start altering the genes, how is that going to affect the health of the humans who have to consume these things? I would suspect foods that are designed to last longer might not digest as well in your gut, the way that they're supposed to when they go through a natural fermentation process.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories, you can contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to request your free Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at The House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them at any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, as we've mentioned before, don't forget about the free online programs to assist you in studying your Holy Scriptures. The Israel Says and Ask Yisrael program. You can find those by typing in either YisraelSays.com or AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another exciting and informative message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.